Hello everyone. So now we will start the next topic, that is the central nervous system, or we can say nervous system, right? So in the nervous system is the complicated system which is basically found in the vertebrates and particularly in the higher vertebrates. It is divided into different types. So as we have already seen what is the nervous system, right? And why it is important, and what all are its structures and functional units and their types and their structure is already done. We have already seen how these nerves will be functioning, how they will be conducting the transmission, how will be they conducting the impulses from one place to another. Okay, so that's all we have done. Now we'll be starting the nervous system, and with the help of these neurons, what we have studied, different types of neurons, they all will be coming together to perform a particular function. Okay, and we'll be carrying out the coordination between the different organs as well. So here we will be starting with the nervous system. Okay, so we see nervous system can be broadly divided into two types. The nervous system can be broadly divided into two types, that is central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So broadly, the nervous system can be divided into two types, two main parts, that is the not types, it basically divided can be two parts, that is central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system will be consisting the main two regions, that is the brain is the center one, okay, and the spinal cord. So these two parts will be constituting the central nervous system, while the peripheral nervous system will be of again two types, that is autonomic nervous system, ANS, or this peripheral nervous system can also be due to mainly the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. So we'll be discussing about that as well. Autonomic nervous system will be further divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And the spinal nerves are basically mixed nerves arising from the spinal particularly, and all the nerves, motor nerves, association nerves and all that. Okay, and cranial nerves are those nerves which are arising from the brain. It will be of three types: sensory nerves, number 1, 2 and 8. Motor nerves, that is 3, 4, 6, 9, 6, 11, 12. These are the motor nerves, and mixed nerves will be 5, 7, 9th and 10th. These are different types of nerves which are arising from the brain. So broadly, the nervous system will be divided into two types, that is central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So we'll be discussing each of them in detail. So right now we are starting with the central nervous system. So in the case of vertebrates, including the man, the CNS is dorsal. So it is positioned in the dorsal part of the body. So in the case of vertebrates, the central nervous system is dorsal, that is present in the dorsal region of the body. It is hollow and non-ganglionated. It is hollow, it means it is not solid, it will be having hollow nature, it will be possessing some fluid present within it. Okay, and non-ganglionated. The ganglionated is basically a lump of the network, or we can say network of a neurons. Okay, so that is called as ganglion. So ganglions are mainly found in the invertebrates, particularly like insects and all that. But in the case of vertebrates, the brain is non-ganglionated in nature. So it is dorsally placed, hollow in structure and non-ganglionated. While when we say invertebrates, so in the case of invertebrates, it will be ventrally placed. You have to keep it in mind. In the case of invertebrates, it will be placed ventrally. It will be placed towards the ventral region. Okay, and they are not basically hollow; they are solid, and double and gangulated. Okay, they are double and gangulated. So they may be having more than one systems. Okay, so they are ventrally placed, solid, double and gangulated. Now, this CNS, that central nervous system, is basically formed by two important parts are present in the central nervous system. Okay, these two important parts are the brain and the spinal cord. So we are basically talking about the vertebrates particularly about the human beings. Okay, so the central nervous system is basically made up of two parts, that is brain and the spinal cord. The brain is the one which is lying at the upper. Brain is the part which is lying at the upper region, and broader part lying in the head. So it is the upper part and the broader part lying in the head, in the skull particularly, if we speak about the skeleton tissues. Okay, so it will be lying in the skull, while the spinal cord is the one which is present at the lower to the brain. It is present lower to the brain, and it's a long and narrow part. running from beginning of the neck. It's basically running from the beginning from the neck to the trunk. Okay, so it is a long slender hollow part which is basically running from the below, just beginning of the neck and to the trunk, to the whole trunk. Our central nervous system is covered by 3 meninges. Meninges are specific type of layers which will be covering this brain and this spinal cords. Okay, so it is covered by 3 meninges layer. We will be discussing about the function as well, and its wall has 2 types of matter. So it is basically covered by 3 meninges layer, and which are again having a walls which has got 2 types of matter, that is the gray matter and the white matter. Gray matter and the white matter. So we can say the central nervous system of vertebrate is formed by 2 types of matter which are basically distinguishable by this color particularly. Okay, so we can say gray matter and the white matter. So exactly they would not be observing as gray, but due to of some light and dark structures will be observed. Okay, so what are gray matters? So gray matters are basically formed by the cell bodies, or we can say cytone. Okay, so the gray matter is formed by the cell bodies, and it is the one which is non-modulated. Non-modulated means it will not be myelinated. They will be non-myelinated. The myelin sheath will be absent over here. So gray matter is formed by the cell body which are non-modulated, and neuroglia will be present. So neuroglia is the cells which are basically present in the central nervous system along with the neural cells. Okay, it's responsible for bringing them together. Okay, so the forms of cell bodies, non-modulated nerve fibers, and neuroglia, the dendrites of association neurons and motor neurons. Now we had seen the types of neuron over there. We had seen the motor neurons which are responsible for bringing out the muscular contraction and the glandular secretion in the cells, okay, in the different parts of body. And association neurons are the neurons which are basically having the same direction. It's a type of neurons having the same direction. Okay, so this all neurons, association neurons, motor neurons, and the neuroglial cells along with the nerve fibers which are non-modulated, that is non-myelinated, are found in the gray matter. Okay, next is the white matter. So white matter is basically formed by the nerve fibers which are modulated. These are formed by the modulated nerve fiber, or we can say myelinated nerve fiber, okay, which are basically over here the axon of the motor and sensory neuron. The axon of motor and the sensory neurons will be myelinated. So over here the axon and the sensory neurons, axons of sensory and motor neurons will be myelinated, which appear white due to the presence of medullary sheath, or we can say myelin sheath. So because over here the white matter, the myelin sheath is present, and hence it is called as myelinated white matter. This myelin sheath will be bringing out imparting a whitish color substance in this particular neurons, and hence it is observed as a white matter, while the gray matter is the one which is myelin sheath is absent, and hence it will be basically along with the neuroglia and the other neurons, and it will be basically observed as a gray matter. Okay, these both are present in the central nervous system. Okay, now let us start with the structure of human brain. In the central nervous system we will be having 2 parts, that is brain and the spinal cord. So we should be starting our topic with the brain. So let us discuss the structure of the brain. Now the brain is a soft, whitish, large sized and slightly flattened structure. So the main characteristic or main properties are, it is a soft tissue, it is a soft, whitish because of presence of myelin particularly. So these are soft, whitish and large sized and slightly flattened structure present inside the cranial cavity of the cranium of the skull. So the skull will be having a specific cavity called as cranial cavity, within which this brain is basically fixed, which is when the brain is present. Around it will be weighing around 1200 to 1400 gram in man particularly. So it will be weighing around 1200 to 1400 gram in man, and it is believed to be having around 10,000 millions of neurons. So this amount of brain, that is around 1200 to 1400 gram, which is present in the cranial cavity of the cranium of the skull, is believed to be having around more than 10,000 millions of neurons. Okay, and this brain is made up of 3 parts. That is forebrain, midbrain and the hindbrain. Forebrain, midbrain and the hindbrain. So here you can see this is the forebrain. This is the forebrain consisting of mainly the cerebrum, thalamus and hypothalamus. Okay, so the major part of the brain is the forebrain consisting the cerebrum, thalamus and hypothalamus, while the midbrain is the one which is connecting this forebrain and the hindbrain, and the hindbrain will be basically consisting of pons, cerebellum and medulla. Pons, cerebellum and medulla. Okay, so these are the different parts of the forebrain, which are basically broadly divided into three parts, that is forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Okay, here again you can see this is the forebrain consisting of cerebrum, thalamus and hypothalamus. This is the cerebrum, this is the whole part of cerebrum, this is the thalamus, and just below this thalamus we have got the hypothalamus. And the midbrain is basically the one which is connecting this forebrain and the hindbrain. Hindbrain consists of the pons. This is the pons, this is the medulla oblongata, and this is the cerebellum just behind this midbrain particularly. Okay, now both the midbrain plus hindbrain, the midbrain and the hindbrain both together are called as brain stem. It's important. Both together, that is midbrain and hindbrain, both will be together be called as brain stem. Both will be together called as brain stem. That was about the brief structure. Let us start now discussing each of the structure in a detail. Okay. Now the forebrain is also called as prosencephalon. The forebrain is also called as prosencephalon. The forebrain is also called as prosencephalon, and it forms an anterior 2/3 of the brain, and it is formed of three parts. So the major part of the brain is basically taken up by the forebrain, and it forms anteriorly 2/3 of the brain, and mainly made up of three parts. These three parts are olfactory bulb, olfactory tract. Okay, so let us see. So what is olfactory bulb, olfactory tract, and the third part is the this forebrain, or is also called as prosencephalon. It is further divided into mainly three parts. These are the olfactory lobe. Second is the cerebrum, or we can say tellisencephalon. Okay, so olfactory lobe is also called as rhinosencephalon. So note it down. So the forebrain can be divided into three parts, that is olfactory lobes, which is also called as rhinocephalon, rhinecephalon. So it can be divided into rhinocephalon, that is olfactory lobe. Second is the cerebrum, that is tellisencephalon, cerebrum, and the third one is the diencephalon, that is the diencephalon. So the forebrain can be divided into majorly three parts, that is olfactory lobes and cerebrum and the diencephalon. So let us start with the olfactory lobes first of all. Now the olfactory lobes, the name itself suggests these are the one pair, small sized, club shaped. There are one pair of small sized, club shaped, solid and completely covered by cerebral hemisphere dorsally. So these are the lobes which are basically solid in nature. They are solid in nature, small in size, and present in a pair. Okay, so these are the small structures of the brain part which are basically present in a pair, small in size and solid in nature. It is not hollow, it won't be having any fluid within it. Okay, the solid, club shaped, small size and present in a pair, which are now covered completely by cerebral hemisphere dorsally. So dorsally they will be covered with the cerebral hemisphere. Okay, so the olfactory lobe, cerebrum and the diencephalon. Now it will be consisting of two parts. This olfactory lobes, each of these lobe will be basically divided into two parts, that is olfactory bulb and olfactory tract. Okay, now what is olfactory bulb? So it's an anterior swollen part. Which is called as olfactory bulb. So you won't be able to see. Okay, so it will be an anterior swollen part called as olfactory bulb. It will be bulbous in nature because of having such type of structure. Okay, so it's anterior swollen part, and second is the olfactory tract. It's the posterior part of this olfactory lobe. And comparatively narrow part. It's comparatively narrow part which ends in olfactory area of temporal lobe of cerebral hemisphere. Now we will knowing the cerebral hemisphere will be having different lobes responsible for different functions. Now this olfactory tract is basically present in the posterior of olfactory lobe, which will be narrow, and it ends into the olfactory area of temporal lobe. It will be ending into the olfactory area of the temporal lobe of central hemisphere. Okay. Now the main function of this olfactory lobe is that it controls the smell. Okay. So this is the main function of the olfactory lobes. Now the thing is something which has to be noted. It is that it is normal in frog, rabbit, and man. It will be almost same. But in the case of dog, the olfactory lobe is so powerful, and hence the smelling power of the dog is again so fast, so powerful. And these are also well developed in dogfish, and named dogfish is on the basis of well developed olfactory lobes. So those olfactory lobes are mainly properly developed or highly developed in the case of the dogs, and also in the case of the fish which are called as dogfish, because of having high smelling capacity. Next is the cerebrum. So first is the olfactory lobe. First part of the forebrain is the olfactory lobe, or we can say rhinocephalon. Next is the cerebrum, or we can say telesymphalon. Now this cerebrum is further divided into 5 lobes. These are the 5 lobes. Okay. So this cerebrum is further divided into 5 lobes, that is frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital, temporal, and insula. You have to understand what all these lobes are. It will be frontal lobe, which will be present in the front particularly, we will see that. Then parietal, occipital, temporal, and insula. So these are different parts of the front brain. These are different parts of the cerebrum. Okay, so let us start. The cerebrum is divided into 5 parts, that is the frontal, then occipital, and temporal, and insula. Now a lobe called insula is hidden as it lies deep in the sylvian fissure. So the lobe insula is not basically is not easily available to see. Okay, because it will be hidden under the sylvian fissures. Which are the type of fissures present in the brain. A cerebral hemisphere are separated from olfactory lobes by rhinal fissures. The cerebral hemisphere will be separated from the olfactory lobes by the renal fissures. Okay, so here this is the cerebral hemisphere. Okay, and it is a cerebrum. This whole part is cerebrum, which will be consisting of the occipital lobe, temporal lobe, parietal lobe, frontal lobe, and the insula. Okay, and this cerebral hemisphere, the lobe called insula is hidden. Okay, and it lies deep in the sylvian fissures. Okay, while the cerebral hemisphere are separated from olfactory lobes. This will be separated from olfactory lobes by rhinal fissures. Okay. Now, next is, let us see. A few sulci are well developed and form the three deep and wide fissures. The sulci are basically type of the constructions. Okay, so the few sulci are well developed and form 3 deep and wide fissures which divide each cerebral hemisphere into 4 lobes. So each cerebral hemisphere is again divided into 4 lobes. Okay, so we have got 2 cerebral hemisphere, and this cerebral hemisphere are basically having the different lobes. Each hemisphere will be having 1 lobe. It means it will be having every one in pair. So it will be consisting anterior lobe, frontal lobe, middle parietal lobe, and posterior occipital lobe, and lateral temporal lobe. We have the different 4 lobes, that is anterior frontal lobe, middle parietal lobe, posterior occipital lobe, and lateral temporal lobe. Okay, now let us see now the function of the cerebrum, the main functions of the cerebrum. What are the main functions of cerebrum is that it is a center of intelligence, emotion, willpower of the organism is also determined by the central cerebrum. It's also determined by the cerebrum. Memory, consciousness, imagination, experience, knowledge, reasoning, voluntary control, weeping, and laughing. These all are the different type of processes which are taken care by the cerebrum. Even the micturition and the defecation. Micturition and defecation is also taken care by the cerebrum. So cerebrum is an important part of the. Forebrain. It's an important part of the forebrain. Actually, the whole brain itself, we can say. Okay, next is some things has to be noted, that is the peripheral portion of each cerebral hemisphere is formed of gray matter and it's called as cerebral cortex. So the peripheral portion of each cerebral hemisphere is formed of gray matter. Okay, the peripheral part is called as gray matter, formed of gray matter and is called as cerebral cortex, while deeper part is formed of white matter and is called as cerebral medulla. So the cerebrum is again can be demarcated into two different types, that is cerebrum cortex and cerebrum medulla. The inner one, which is formed by the dark matter, the white matter, is called as cerebral medulla, while the peripheral one, the outer one of the cerebral hemisphere, is formed of gray matter. It's formed of gray matter and it is called as cerebral cortex. Okay. Now the two cerebral hemispheres are interconnected. These two cerebral hemispheres, which are basically present as a part of forebrain, are interconnected by a thick band of transverse nerve fibers. Of white matter called as corpus callosum. So what is corpus callosum? Corpus callosum is a thick band of transverse nerve fibers. It's a thick band of transverse nerve fibers which will be responsible for connecting two cerebral hemisphere, Okay, it is made up of white matter. Called as corpus callosum. Okay, next it is basically now we have seen what are these different types of cerebrum has got different lobes. Okay, and now let us see. The cerebral cortex is believed to be the highest center. The cerebral cortex is believed to be the highest center for many sensation activities, and is with a number of sensory areas. Around cerebral cortex will be around 2 to 4 millimeter thickness. So cerebral cortex will be around of 2 to 4 millimeter thickness. And if cerebrum is removed, the animal becomes simple reflex animal. If the cerebrum is removed, the animal will be becoming simple reflex animal, because it takes part in many logical and other different decisions. Okay, so if the cerebrum is removed, the organism will become simple reflex system. Okay, now let us see the diencephalon, the third part. The first part was the olfactory lobe. The second part was the cerebrum, consisting of other 5 parts as well, and the third part is the diencephalon. And the diencephalon cavity is also called as third ventricle or diacyl. So diencephalon cavity is also called as third ventricle or diacyl, and a thin roof of this cavity is known as epithalamus. The thin roof will be present for this cavity, which is called as epithalamus. And the thick right and the left sides of thalami and the floor as of hypothalamus. So this diencephalon will be consisting of mainly epithalamus, thalamus and hypothalamus. The diencephalon will be consisting of mainly 3 parts, that is epithalamus, thalamus and the hypothalamus. Okay, now within this, the epithalamus is the one which will be forming the roof of third ventricles. So this diencephalon is also called as third ventricle or diacyl. It's also called as third ventricle, or we can say diacyl. Now it is composed of 3 parts, that is epithalamus, thalamus and the hypothalamus. Epithalamus and the hypothalamus. Now the epithalamus will be, by name itself it suggests that it will be the epithelial cells particularly. So it forms the roof of third ventricle. And it is not formed of nerve tissues. It mainly consists of pia mater only. So the epithalamus is not basically consisting any type of nerve tissues. It will not be consisting of any type of nerve tissue, but it will be formed by the pia mater only. Its anterior part is vascular and folded. And which is called as anterior choroid plexus. So there are some plexus developed over here which will be having other functions as well. So the anterior part is basically vascular and folded, and this folding structures are called as anterior choroid plexus. Okay, so epithalamus is not formed of nervous tissue, so it is a bit of less significance. As a nerve center, and its anterior part is vascular folded, and it is called as anterior choroid plexus. Now behind this plexus, the epithalamus gives us a short stalk. Behind this plexus, the epithalamus gives us a short stalk, the pineal stalk, which bears a small rounded body, the pineal body. So behind this epithelium there will be a stalk which will be bearing the pineal stalk, which will be bearing the pineal body. Hence it is called as pineal stalk. And at its tip and paired right and left habenal nuclei olfactory of the smell. Okay, so here we will see we will be seeing this behind this plexus. Epithelium will be giving us a short stalk, the pineal stalk, which bears a small rounded body, the pineal body, at its tip. Next is thalamus. Now thalamus is a pair of mass of gray matter. It's a pair of mass of gray matters. We have seen the gray matter is a part of this system. Okay, so the pair of mass of gray matter forms the superior part of lateral walls of the third ventricle. So this diencephalon will be divided into three parts, that is epithalamus, thalamus and the hypothalamus. Okay, now epithalamus is the one which is forming the roof of this third ventricle. It is the one which is forming the roof of the third ventricle, that is the diencephalon. Okay, so it will be the roof part, uppermost part, and it consists of pia mater only. Okay, it is of relatively low significance. There is no much significant over here. Okay, behind this plexus there will be occurring the short stalk, or we can say pineal stalk, which bears a small rounded body called as pineal body. Okay, and as it tips, it's paired right and left habenal nuclei. Okay, which are the olfaction for the smell. It's responsible for smell. Okay, so the epithalamus does not have very much significance in its functioning, but it will be having this pineal body attached to it. Okay, and they will be having this pineal body attached to it. Okay, now next is the thalamus. Thalamus is a pair of mass of gray matter. It's a pair of mass of gray matter, forms a superior part of the lateral walls. Superior part of the lateral walls of the third ventricles. The ventricles is the cavity, and this cavity's upper roof part is basically made up of epithalamus, and the superior part of the lateral walls. The lateral walls of this ventricle is basically made up by thalamus, and it measures around 3 cm length and comprises 80% of the diencephalon. So it is measuring about 3 cm and responsible for around 80% of the total diencephalon region. Now this thalamus is a principal relay station for sensory impulses. So whatever the sensory impulses are getting inside the body, this is where the relay will be occurring. This is the part where the sensory inputs will be analyzed and then related to the different parts of the brain. It will be related to the different parts of the brain. So this thalamus is a principal relay station for sensory impulses that reach the cerebral cortex from spinal cord, brain and stem and cerebellum. So this brain, the spinal cord, brain and all these different parts of the body will be bringing this sensory neurons to this particular place, where now from here thalamus will be deciding whether which part has to be basically, which sensory organs is basically related to the which part of the brain. So it allows the crude appreciation of some sensations such as pain, temperature and pressure. Okay, certain nuclei in the thalamus relay all sensory inputs into cerebral cortex. So some of the nuclei is the group of, or because you can say it's a structure made up of neurons which is responsible for carrying out some particular function. So certain nuclei in the thalamus relay all the sensory inputs to cerebral cortex. Okay, so there are some nuclei which will be relaying all the sensory inputs into the cerebral cortex, which has got different parts of brain, that is forebrain, parietal, temporal, occipital, etc. So medial geninucleate nucleus for hearing. Okay, medial geninucleate responsible for hearing, which is present in the thalamus. Lateral geninucleate nucleus for vision, and ventral posterior nucleus for taste, touch, pressure, vibration, heat, cold and pain. That is the ventral posterior nucleus. Other nuclei are the centers for synapses in somatic motor system. They include ventral lateral nuclei and ventral anterior nucleus. Okay, which are responsible for providing the nucleus for the voluntary motor actions, while the anterior nucleus concerns with the emotions in the memory. So these are the main part of the thalamus. Okay, so thalamus is the one which is having lot of nuclei responsible for the relaying the sensory neurons. Okay, different parts. Okay, next is the hypothalamus. It is one of the most important part of the forebrain. So diencephalon is the main important part of the forebrain. So hypothalamus is visible in the ventral view of the brain. So here it is the ventral view, Here you can see this is cerebrum. This is cerebrum. Okay, and here you can see this hypothalamus. Okay. So here somewhere the hypothalamus will be there. Let us see it in here. So here it is, hypothalamus is present. This is the hypothalamus. This is the epithalamus forming a roof. This thalamus, which is consisting of 80% of the total structure. Okay, and this is the hypothalamus. This is the hypothalamus. Okay, now hypothalamus is visible in the ventral view, and it forms the floor of the encephalon. It forms the floor of the encephalon. It forms the floor of the encephalon. Okay, and it also gives a nervous process called infundibulum. It will be responsible for produce particular structure called as infundibulum, and which forms a pars nervosa. We will discuss their function. So this infundibulum, which meets a rounded non-nervous pharyngeal outgrowth called as hypophysis. So this infundibulum will be meeting to a specific structure which is non-nervous in nature, which is non-neural in nature, and its pharyngeal outgrowth, non-nervous pharyngeal outgrowth called as hypophysis. And both collectively, infundibulum and the hypophysis will be collectively form a master gland called as pituitary. So the hypothalamus along with the hypophysis will be forming a master gland called as, infundibulum and the hypophysis both together will be forming a master gland called as pituitary gland. So the hypothalamus is a region from which the specific non-neural structures, that is hypophysis, will be originating, and it will be also having a nervous process called infundibulum, which both together forms a structure that is master gland called as pituitary will be formed, pituitary body. A stalked outgrowth of infundibulum combines with a pouch like epithelial growth, that is Rathke's pouch. Okay, after embryonic mouth. Okay, so it's not important right now. Next is the forming a pituitary gland of hypothalamus, which secretes numerous hormones. So the pituitary gland, which is formed in the hypothalamus by the hypothalamus, will be responsible for secreting lot of hormones. Okay, in front of hypothalamus there is a cross of two optic nerves called optic chiasma. So just in front of the hypothalamus there will be two optic nerves which are responsible for providing the sensory which are responsible for taking the senses from the optic, that is eyes, to the brain. So these are called as optic nerves, and which are forming a cross which is called as optic chiasma. Behind the hypothalamus there is one pair of small rounded nipple-like bodies called as mammillary body or corpora mammillaris. So in front of this hypothalamus there is a optic chiasma, while behind this hypothalamus there is a specific small body-like structure, nipple-like structure called as mammillary bodies or corpora mammillaris. Okay, the hypothalamus consists of many masses of gray matter called as hypothalamic nuclei scattered in the white matter. Okay, so the main regions of hypothalamus is basically consisting of infundibulum and the hypophysis, which both together forms a pituitary gland, which is a master gland, and these are responsible for secreting the hormones. The frontal part of the hypothalamus will be consisting a cross of two optic nerves called as optic chiasma, and behind the hypothalamus there will be a small rounded nipple-like bodies called as mammillary bodies. Okay, and the hypothalamus consists of many masses of gray matter called as hypothalamic nuclei and scattered in the white matter. Okay, in man and some other mammals particularly, most fibers of optic nerves crosses, but some fibers do not cross and innervate the eyes at their own respective sites. So this is about the optic nerves, right? Hypothalamus is a center of hunger. The main functions of the hypothalamus is it's a site of hunger. It's a center for hunger, thirst, sweating, sleep, fatigue, temperature, feeling of anger, pleasure, love, hate, satisfaction, all that. So hypothalamus plays a very important role in regulating the different emotions like pleasure, anger, love, hate, satisfaction, etc. And it is also the site of feeling hunger, thirst, sweating, sleep, etc. It is also the center to release factors for endocrine glands. It will be responsible for releasing some endocrine factors like the different factors will be secreted from this hypothalamus as well. Okay, which will be regulating the endocrine glands, different endocrine glands like the glands which are present, the reproductive glands present in the organisms. Okay, even the other glands like the thyroid glands will be present, which is also regulated by this. Okay, so they directly, indirectly, they will be responsible for producing some factors which will be initiating the secretions of the gland or inducing the secretion of gland, or sometimes it may inhibit the gland's function. Okay, inhibit the gland's function. Okay, next, it also controls the autonomic nervous system. It also controls the autonomic nervous system, that is, we will be discussing what it is, consisting of sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. It's a center for regulation of parasympathetic, that is craniosacral activity. When stimulated, it causes slowing down of the heartbeat. So it basically center for regulation of parasympathetic activity is a part of autonomic nervous system, where it causes a slowing down of heartbeat, contraction of visceral muscles, etc. Now, function of diencephalon. So diencephalon will be made up of three parts: epithalamus, which is not a lot of significance; thalamus, which is having relay centers for the cerebral cortex, cerebral parts. Okay, and then last one is the thalamus. Hypothalamus, which is basically forming structures infundibulum and hypophysis, which is forming this pituitary gland and secreting hormones. Okay, and this hypothalamus will be the site of center for the different structures, different emotions, and also different feelings like hunger, okay, thirst, and fatigue. All this, temperature control and all this will be taken care by the hypothalamus. Okay, in the front of the hypothalamus we have got two nerves which are basically called as optic nerves, while behind the hypothalamus there will be a structure called as mammalian bodies. Okay, so this was about the hypothalamus. Next, what is the total function of the diencephalon? So it is responsible for carbohydrate metabolism, regulating the carbohydrate metabolism, okay, and the fat metabolism. So these are directly and indirectly responsible for maintaining the carbohydrate metabolism and fat metabolism, and it relays the impulses from posterior region of brain and also to the posterior region of, so it relays the information of the impulses which are basically received from the posterior region of brain, and it also take these impulses to the posterior region of brain. So it will be basically functioning in that manner that it will be getting the inputs from the posterior brain. It will be giving the output also at the posterior brain. It secretes neurohormones. Okay, it secretes neurohormones which are secreted from the neural part of the body, and from part of pituitary gland we have seen it will be releasing its hormone not directly into the blood, but it will be releasing it into the, first of all, pituitary gland, and then that will be released in the blood. It will be responsible for secreting the cerebrospinal fluid, which is the main constituent of the cavities present in the brain. Okay, so it will be secreting the cerebrospinal fluid as well. That was about the function of diencephalon. So we are done with the forebrain, which consists of cerebrum, again having different lobes, then the diencephalon, okay, and the occipital olfactory lobes, okay, then the diencephalon and the cerebrum. So we are done with these three different parts of the forebrain. Okay, next is the midbrain. So next, let us start with the midbrain. So midbrain is the part which connects the forebrain and hindbrain. The midbrain is the part which connects the forebrain and the hindbrain, and it basically consists of optic lobes. It mainly consists of optic lobes. Okay, so let us see. So the midbrain is the part which connects the forebrain and the hindbrain, and it is the one which is responsible for connecting the both, and is located between the hypothalamus of the forebrain and pons of the hindbrain. We can note it down. It is located in between the thalamus, or we can say hypothalamus of the forebrain. It is located within the hypothalamus and the forebrain and the pons of hindbrain. So we can say it is the linking between the forebrain and the hindbrain. Now it is basically divided into mainly two parts. That is the optic lobes and the inferior and the cerebral optical lobes and the cerebral peduncle. It is mainly divided into two parts. That is the optical lobes and the cerebral peduncle. Optical lobes and the cerebral peduncles. Now, what are the optical lobes? So these are one pair. This is the one pair, large size lobe present on dorsal side. These are the one pair, large size lobes present on the dorsal side of the brain. Okay, and each is divided transversely into upper and larger superior colliculus. Each one is basically divided into upper and larger superior colliculus. Okay. So there are basically four optic lobes called as optic corpora, or we can say corpora quadrigerna. Corpora quadrigemina. Okay, so each of them will be basically consisting 4 lobes, and hence it is called as corpora quadrigemina, or we can say optic quadrigemina. Okay, and now this will be further divided into 2 parts: the superior optic lobe, or we can say superior colliculus, and the inferior colliculus. Superior colliculus, or we can say inferior colliculus. The superior colliculus, they are concerned with the reflex action of eye, head and the neck in the response to visual stimulus. So the superior optical lobe, or we can say superior colliculus, is responsible for the reflex action of the eye, head and the neck in the response to visual stimulus, while the inferior colliculus concerned with the movement of head and trunk in response to hearing stimulus. So we have got this optic lobes consist of mainly 2 lobes, okay, which is divided again and forms the corpora quadrigemina. Okay, and these are the having 2 particular parts, that is superior optic lobe and the inferior colliculus. Superior optic lobe is responsible for reflex action of eye, head and neck in response to visual stimulus. So whatever the visual stimulus is there, according to it, it will be reflexing out the eye, movement of the eye, head and neck. But inferior colliculus is the one which is responsible for movement of head and trunk in response to the hearing stimulus. So they will be controlled by both the type of stimulus, visual stimulus and the hearing stimulus. Okay. Next part of the optic lobe, the next part of the midbrain is the cerebral peduncle, or it's also called as crura cerebri. The cerebral peduncle, they are the pair of thick bands of longitudinal nerve fiber present on the floor of ventral side of brain. Okay, so these are the thick bands of longitudinal nerve fiber present on the floor of the ventral side of the midbrain. On the ventral side of the midbrain, this connects upper and lower region of brain. This connects the upper and lower region of the brain. Okay, the functions of midbrain. It's a pair of anterior optic lobes we have seen. The superior colliculi is also known as superior colliculi, related to vision, while the pair of posterior optic lobe called as inferior colliculi related to the auditory, that is hearing. And this acts as a coordination between the hind and the forebrain. It acts as a coordination between the hindbrain and the forebrain. Okay. So something to be noted that midbrain and hindbrain both together called as brainstem, and the canal called the cerebral adequate passes through the midbrain. A canal, so we can say the midbrain is comparatively hollow in nature, through which a canal is passing, which is called as cerebral aqueduct, which passes through it. Okay, and midbrain and hindbrain both will be together called as brainstem. Okay, next is the hindbrain. So hindbrain is the basically posterior most part of the brain. Okay, so the hindbrain comprises of mainly the pons, cerebellum, medulla, or we can say medulla oblongata. So it consists of mainly 3 parts, that is the pons, cerebellum and medulla. Pons, cerebellum and the medulla. Now first of all, let us start with the cerebellum. It is also called as sandwich brain. Why? Because it is the second largest portion of the brain, lies in posterior to the medulla and pons, and inferior to the posterior portion of the cerebellum. So cerebellum is the second largest portion of the brain. Okay, second most largest portion of the brain. It's basically butterfly in shape of structure. Its structure is basically made up of, it's like butterfly shape, and the superficial layer of the cerebellum called cerebral cortex consists of grey matter. So the superficial layer of cerebellum will be consisting of the grey matter, and deep to grey matter are the white matter tree. Deep to this grey matter will be a white matter tree called as arbor vitae. We can say a tree of life. Okay, so deep to this grey matter will be a white matter tree, which is called as arbor vitae, or we can say the tree of life. Cerebellum has very convoluted surfaces in order to provide the additional space for many more neurons. So this will be having highly folded structures which will be responsible for providing the additional space for many more neurons which will be present. Okay, now let us see the functional of cerebellum. It is the center for coordination of muscular movement. It is the center for the coordination of the muscular movement, and it's the primary center for balancing, equilibrium and orientation. So it is the one which is responsible for balancing. So whenever the person is under the effect of the alcohol particularly, so the cerebellum will be affected, and hence he will not be able to maintain a posture of himself, and he will not be able to walk properly, he will not be able to balance himself properly. Okay, so this is the main why, because this will be affecting the cerebellum, which is the main part of the brain which is responsible for coordination of the muscular movement and balancing and equilibrium, all that. Okay, next is the medulla oblongata. So medulla oblongata is the hindest and the posterior most part of the brain. It is the hindest and the posterior most part of the brain, and the cavity is known as fourth ventricle, or we can say metacell. Okay, so this cavity of medulla oblongata is called as fourth ventricle, or we can say metacell, which is continuous with the central canal of the spinal cord through foramen magnum. So this medulla oblongata will be basically having a hollow cavity within it, which is called as metacell, or we can say fourth ventricle, which will be in the continuation to the spinal cord, which will be continuation to the spinal cord through the foramen magnum. That's the opening of the spinal cord. That's the foramen magnum. Now it has a pair of lateral foramina of Luschka and median foramen Magendie. Okay, the cerebrospinal fluid comes in contact by this aperture from internal cavity of the brain to outer fluid meninges. Medulla contain nuclei of origin of 5 pairs of cranial nerves. So it's basically will be containing the nuclei of the origin of 5 different pairs of cranial nerves, that is 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So let us see the function of medulla oblongata. It's responsible for maintaining the heartbeats, respiration, digestion, blood pressure, gut peristalsis, swelling of food, secretion of glands. So these all are the activities or the activities which are maintained or regulated by the medulla oblongata. Involuntary functions like vomiting, coughing, vasoconstrictor, vasodilator, sneezing, hiccuping. These are different functions like control of urination, defecation. Okay. The cardiovascular center, it also has got cardiovascular center which regulates the rate and force of heartbeats. It regulates the rate and force of heartbeats. It also gets a medullary rhythmic area which adjusts the basic rhythm of respiration. It also is responsible for adjusting the basic rhythm of respiration. That is mainly about the medulla oblongata. So let us discuss fatafat what about the medulla oblongata. It's basically the hindest part of the brain and which is connected to the spinal cord through the median foramen, through the foramen magnum. It's the fourth ventricle which is hollow in nature and which will be connected to the spinal cord through the foramen magnum. Now it has a pair of lateral foramen as well, foramina of Luschka and the median foramen. Okay, now this will be having this from this foramens, which these are the apertures actually, these are opening, okay, to the cavity through which this cerebrospinal fluid will come in contact from this, okay. And this medulla contain nuclei of origin this will be containing this origin of the 5 cranial nerves, that is 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. The main functions are heartbeat, respiration, digestion, maintaining and regulating these all things, blood pressure, peristaltic movement, swelling of fluid, secretion of gland, etc. And it will be also it's also having a cardiovascular center which regulates the rate, force and of heartbeat, and also having the medullary rhythmic area which is responsible for adjusting the basic rhythm of the respiration. The last part is the pons veruli. It's an oval mass of white matter called as pons veruli, lies above the medulla oblongata. So it will be just lying above the medulla oblongata, consisting of mainly nerve fibers which interconnect as a bridge, connecting spinal cord and the brain and a part of brain with each other. So it consists mainly of the nerve fibers which interconnect as a bridge and connecting the spinal cord with the brain and parts of brain with each other, right? Pons also has got a pneumotaxic area and apneustic area. Okay, Pons has also got the pneumotaxic area, and it has also got the pneumotaxic area, okay, and the apneustic area. Okay, so together they will be responsible. Together with medullary rheumaticity area, they help in the control of respiration. So pons veruli will be mainly responsible for helping the control of respiration. That was about the pons veruli, that is the hindbrain. Now let us discuss the features of the human brain in a brief. Let us discuss the features of the human brain in a brief. So relatively it's small, consisting of solid olfactory lobes. Okay. Now basically the forebrain will be consisting of the small solid olfactory lobes, and it contains a very large cerebral hemisphere which are divided into lobes, that is cerebral hemisphere which will divide into lobes, okay, with highly foliate surfaces with cerebral cortex of grey matter. Corpus callosum, which is a band of fibers which will be interconnecting the cerebral hemispheres and only found in the euphoria. There will be also occurring a very small pineal body which will be basically considered as a pineal gland responsible for different functions. A pair of mammillary bodies joined to the hypothalamus. Okay, relatively small solid optic lobes divided into 4 corpora quadrigemia which are responsible for the visual stimulus and also for the auditory stimulus. And the large solid cerebellum with highly folded surfaces and divided into lobes is present, which will be responsible for the posture, maintenance of the body's posture, equilibrium, and the balancing of the body and coordination of the muscular movements. And the pons suræ present in the anterior of the cerebellum, which is mainly responsible for the for helping the respiration, control on respiration. So that's all about the features of humeral brain. Okay, and in the next lecture we'll be starting the spinal cord. In the next lecture we'll be starting the spinal cord. That's all. Thank you. Have a nice day.